Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with the article I promised in yesterday's video. This is The Decline and Fall of Home, Part 2. I actually have not read it yet. I figured I'd leave it as a surprise and we could kind of go through it together. So as I said in yesterday's video, I was going to make this one when it came out today. I'm recording this on October 1st. It should be premiering on October 8th in the afternoon because I do have other articles or other stuff lined up for the week in between already. So the first article, if you check it out again, it was just from October 7th. Uh, Go ahead and check that out first. And of course, the article or the link to this article is in the description below. And of course, you should be able to get to part one through part two as well if you want to see the actual article. So again, articles from PJ Media, dated October 1st, The Decline and Fall of Home, Part 2. Let's go and jump into it. There's a quote at the beginning that says, "Unstable equilibrium generates a critical situation." It's from The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. So, says when one considers the full extent of the Roman cataclysm leading to the inevitable fall, says the plethora of corrupt and self-promoting politicians, the exposure of unwanted infants, that's such as open-air abortion, and the consequent decline in the reproductive ratio, the deterioration of road systems and infrastructure, the degrading of a once mighty military, and the evident degeneration of sexual morality, as the 5th century Christian historian Salvian declaimed, be ashamed of your lives. No cities are free of impurities. One cannot help but note the affinities and correlations between the Roman Empire and the American Republic. So it says both have suffered what is come to be known as the Polybius trap, named after the second century Greek Roman historian Polybius, who expounded the notion in his histories. The idea is that once the political equilibrium between the three branches of government, and in Rome it was the consulship, senate, and tribunate, in America the executive, legal, or legislative, and judicial, is shattered, decline is inevitable. It is as if the various units of the political engine have seized with improperly distributed or stranded energy. The concept of a malign disequilibrium also applies more generally to the entire complex system of social, political, and economic organization of state or empire. Rome and America may be historically distant from one another, but there is little doubt that they are ideologically intimate and civilizationally aligned. Yeah, our founders based a lot of what, like our laws and everything, and I'm pretty sure the structure too of our government on what was going on in Rome. So they were very well versed in Roman history themselves. So yeah, I'm not surprised by that. It says the old question unavoidably arises: what is to be done? In the Path to Tyranny, Michael Newton suggests that the only possible, if fanciful, answer, the response of a desperate optimist, not optimist like Prime. So the response of a desperate optimist: how do we fight and oppose the approaching tyranny? Obviously, we must vote in elections and support those in politics who defend our liberty and Constitution. Most important of all, each of us must act as a modern day Samuel, Solon, Socrates, Cicero, Cato, James Madison, persuading people of the advantages of liberty and informing them of the evils of big government. That's a pretty tall order. It says, as Newton wrote in 2010, before the plummet in snowflake literacy, the censoring monopoly of the digital platforms, the oppressive COVID mandates of an autocratic government, the advent of wokeism, the complete DEI annihilation of the university, and the advanced machinery of electoral fraud. I was starting to think that, and I think Michael Newton was mentioned in the article, the part one article. If he wasn't, I am just an idiot. And that's fine. But it just seemed like what I was reading here, I don't know, it just felt like it was older than simply just 2010. But he's kind of calling out and he's right about them, informing people of the evils of big government. And I'm sorry, folks, if you're out there and you're not on the right side of the political spectrum, not the crook side, but the actual, like you're a right winger, that and you still believe all this, you still believe in government, COVID should have been your wake up call. And if it didn't wake you up, I don't think it's possible to wake you up. So it says, as our greatest political historians have told us, from Polybius to Giambattista Vico to Edward Gibbon to Alexis de Tocqueville to Arnold Toynbee, scientists tend to sink into destitution and various forms of tyrannical governance, having failed what Toynbee called the challenge and response test. Instead of arriving at new solutions, decaying nations and empires are prone to fall back on tired and unavailing practices. Old errors are easy to repeat, James O'Donnell concludes in The Ruin of the Roman Empire, as fading empires, bereft of self-awareness, struggle again to use their old power to preserve themselves, and in doing so, risk weakening beyond repair. One might say, along with Toynbee, that they have failed history's challenge response CAPTCHA test, proceeding in robotic rather than responsive fashion. And I was thinking as I was reading that, like, what happens if the United States goes away? Like, what takes its place? I gave silence, a little bit of silence there for some breathing room. Like, what comes next? And I God honestly hope I'm not around for that. I never thought that was a question I would even be pondering as recently as like, you know, 6 or 7 years ago, much less today. Just as Neil Ferguson crowns his civilization, the West and the rest, with the suggestion that maybe the real threat is posed not by the rise of China, Islam, or CO2 emissions, but by our own loss of faith in the civilization we inherited from our ancestors, and by our own pusillanimity, it's good enough, and by historical ignorance that feeds it. Yeah, I've said before in many other videos that that as a non-religious person myself, though I do, using the less language, identify as Jewish. I am Jewish. It's not that I identify it, I am Jewish. But I've always said that I thought that for a long time now that we're missing God in our lives. And if we found God, I think that would make things a lot better for a lot of people and really quick. Okay, like that's probably the fastest way to go. But there's people out there that are just, oh, the invisible sky man, blah blah blah. Let's worship something else. Okay, we'll go back. I guess if you guys want to go back to paganism, that's cool, but it ain't helping anybody. So it says, is the culture too far gone to allow for political recovery and a true social awakening? Was philosopher Martin Heidegger, despite his unsavory past, right when he said in a Der Spiegel interview, only a God can save us? Okay, well, I guess I guess I accidentally read ahead there. The article saw what I was thinking. And I don't think it's a God. I think it's only God, capital G, can save us. But again, that's just my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments below. Article continues, as here it is necessary to introduce a countervailing view. Edward Watts argues in a polemical tome, The Eternal Decline and Fall of Rome, that there was no one decline and fall, but a sequence of such historical declivities. Rome declined many times, he writes, and that's actually true. It recovered many times, and it's true, and therefore it seems to offer lessons to people facing similar challenges in less successful or durable states. In other words, all is not lost. If there is always decline, or rather a skein of linked decline, there is always the possibility of renewal. What then could be the problem? Yeah, if you read upon history, especially like during the Roman Republic and Empire, Rome was sacked a bunch of times, and just the final time in 476 was like it didn't recover after that for like until the Renaissance, I want to say. So that was why people generally say like that's when Rome, like the empire ended. Well, the Western Roman Empire ended was at that point because Rome itself, like I said, did not recover for a very, very long time. But again, the empire continued on in the east as what we call now the Byzantine Empire or Byzantine Empire. Says Watt's analysis cursorily resembles Colin Murphy's cheerful conviction in Are We Rome? The Fall of an Empire and the Fate of America. That improvement, invention, and reinvention are facts of American life. The difference is that Watts writes as a passionate and erudite neoliberal, or is it neo-Marxist, advocate and victimology maven who dismisses the theory of Roman American decline for sponsoring a facile, conservative recommitment to so-called basic values. He compares the traditional impetus to cultural restoration after a real or perceived fall to Mussolini's fascist rhetoric and project. Sorry, I had a throat there for a minute. So anyway, the rhetoric in decline and renewal is a dangerous idea, he asserts. Why? Because it promotes the wrong sort of renewal, instinct with disruptive potential, blaming the victims of its original triumphs for its ensuing decline, and because others in the future, the marginal, the excluded, the racialized, the poor, the innocent, must suffer in the conservative quest for renewal and recovery. Left wing renewal, good. Right wing renewal, bad. Yeah, of course. That's what all these folks say is that, yeah, if it's on the left, it's good, right, bad. It's going to be a combination of both those things. It's not going to be just one. Okay. So anybody that's selling you on just our side is always good, their side is always bad, those are not people you should be listening to, regardless of the side of the political spectrum that they come from. Because the latter, Watts claims, entails an imperial rhetoric that uses the decline and fall from an idealized Roman past to destabilize existing orders. Simply put, the story of Rome's decline is a ready made narrative to justify taking the lives, rights, and property of rivals. Thus, various falls of Rome were invented to justify wars of reconquest and to ensure the birth of new imperial dynasties. Watt's thesis is so fantastic and contrived that it survives solely on the basis of credentialism rather than on impartial insight, objective research, and most importantly, common sense. Okay, so they basically told that guy got put down. So don't need to worry about that. So it says no serious scholar denies that there were upticks in renewal or of renewal in the downward slope of imperial decline. The period of the five good emperors, for example. God, I'm trying to remember offhand exactly when that was. God, was that started with Vespasian? I could be wrong about that. I know. I think Marcus Aurelius is one of those, and it was Antonius, or was it Antoninus Pius before him? I think Marcus Aurelius was actually the last one. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. It says, as Jeffrey Blaney writes in A Short History of the World, Rome was influential during so many centuries that its time of vitality in one field coincided with slumber or sleepiness in another. But the fact is that Rome ceased to exist except in transformed and misogynous form as the Holy Roman Empire and in the ghostly evolution of Western civilization with its Judaic, Hellenic, Roman, and Christian hauntings. Watts is beating a dead donkey. The real problem is that Watts is a progressivist ideologue, a social justice academic. Well, there's the problem. Says who cannot see that the evils he deplores, as the taking of lives, rights, and property, largely constitute the modus operandi, not the genuine conservatives or classical liberals, but of the socialist and communist left, exemplified by the current Democrat administration in the United States. Its functionaries are not like the later Antonines, who Watts recommends as models of wise stewardship, leaders who bring society together rather than tearing it apart through recrimination and violence. They are the very opposite of Antonines, part of a world that a left historian like Watts himself inhabits. The decline is real for us as it was for Rome. Newton summarizes the government's increased intervention in the economy, including high taxes, price controls, and inflation, which were a direct result of the populace's demand for wealth redistribution and a central government to administer it, were the main causes of Rome's decline and ultimate destruction. Well, does that sound familiar? Like everything in that quote, starting from right here all the way down to here that I've highlighted, if you happen to be looking at your computer screen, that sounds familiar. Well, that's kind of going on right now. Article continues, says the lesson is there to be learned. As the saying goes, desperate times call for desperate measures if the downward trend is to be slowed or turned around, and such measures are precisely those conservative inspired initiatives that the left affects to deplore. That would be a small government, lower taxes, protected borders, onshore industry, self sufficiency, competitive education, judicial reform, free market access, the abolition of censorship, maintenance of heritage, the principle of meritocracy rather than diversity, the sanctity of the family, and the celebration of historical achievements as a counterbalance to the pro forma denigration practiced by cultural Marxists and critical race theorists. Yeah, I'm not a fan of tearing down any of the history stuff. I mean, again, if you read 1984, it'll tell you why that's not a good idea. Everything, all history is new, as they say. By all means, let us strive for the hard-won, reality-grounded humanist renewal that, for all we know, may remain unattainable. Let us do what we can to preserve the blessings of liberty and prosperity now under sustained attack. But it's an uphill battle. It's far from certain whether another electoral cycle or two can begin to reverse the great declension. Yeah, and that's why, geez, if a Democrat wins, we are probably in trouble. So vote Republican. Anyway, it says here the analogy with Rome breaks down or grows somewhat attenuated. In the present context, the prospect of a new Byzantium, carrying on the traditions and political structures of the Republic for an extended historical period, is obviously a geopolitical non starter. There is no eastern half of the American Republic, as there was for the Roman Empire with its 1,100-year lease on life, no American Constantinople. Thinking about that really quick, yeah, I actually agree. I mean, yeah, it's not like I'm not going to get into that right now. This video's already gone on long enough. But yeah, there's not really a comparison there. They're right in the article. It says it may be conceivable only as a kind of inward or fractal phenomenon in the form of the United States declaring secession from a faltering union and reclaiming an originalist interpretation of the Constitution, including the practice of fair elections, a responsible media, a sanely regulated free market economy, and genuine representative government. If nothing changes in the grand scheme of things, this may be the only way, however improbable, that what we call America can survive. That is, a loose amalgam of independent states or as a de facto alliance of self governing provinces. The idea, once floated by Alan West and Ken Paxton in Texas, still hovers. Yep. I don't know. I know Ken Paxton. I think he's the lieutenant governor? Or, no, I'm sorry, the attorney general in Texas. And Alan West, if that's the Colonel Alan West, then. Yeah, I think it is based on what I just saw on that link. Alma is definitely a guy to listen to. So, as John Halden writes in Byzantium, a history, the Byzantines actually called themselves Romans, which is true, and their political ideology was founded on their identity with the Christian Roman Empire. Yeah, there's a fascinating book that I read. It's actually a pretty short book, just called 1453. I apologize, I don't know offhand who wrote it. The book is slightly out of eye shot from where I am sitting at my desk right now. But if you go read that, and it's actually about the Ottomans taking Constantinople and effectively ending uh, the entirety of the Roman Empire, and of course the Byzantines, as you see here. But it talks about how the Byzantines are an anachronism. It's something that we only started calling the Eastern Roman Empire folks like in the last couple hundred years, so well after the empire fell for good. But they always refer to themselves as Romans. It's just really interesting. I just wanted to mention that. To seeing themselves as citizens of an essentially Christian culture is a pregnant homology for a new America whose people can call themselves Americans and who have returned to their traditional foundations. Admittedly, these are speculations treating of a problematic future. Be that as it may, we are now witnessing and experiencing what our mentors have foreseen and studied, and what, barring the unforeseen, may be unstoppable, namely the decline and fall of home. Sobering as all hell to get to the end of that and see it. And like I said, I never thought this would be even a conversation when I was growing up that I'd eventually be seeing people have. If people were having this conversation, it was something where it was like, ah, you're a quack, and people would just like, you know, shoo you away and off you went, sort of thing. But this was never treated seriously. But what do you guys think about this? And I'd invite you to, again, like I said at the beginning, go and listen to part one or read uh the actual article itself that's in the video for part one, which will be on October 7th on my channel. And let me know what you think about part one and part two on here. um yeah, I mean, I'm kind of stunned at some of the things that are in here as well as what I was thinking about part one. While there are definitely similarities in certain things. And the first video goes into part one, I should say, goes into that a little bit more with what those similarities are, besides some of the stuff that was mentioned in here. I do think that it's not entirely the same. And I said before in yesterday's video that I think the Spanish Civil War is a lot closer to what we're seeing today than the Rome stuff, but there's definitely some things there that are worth thinking about and worth comparing present day to. So, again, let me know what you think in the comments below. I thank you for listening to this video, and if you listened to the one yesterday too, to this kind of double video essay. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.